Hello there! Welcome to another episode of Curihistory. Today we will explore the life of Ban Chao, palace clerk, general, diplomat and historian, and fittingly also one of the great explorers serving under the Han emperors. And if had history run a slightly different course, he might even have been the first envoy of Han China to the Roman Empire. Alas, he never actually made it all the way there, even if he was certainly trying. As a side note, apologies for all the names I may mispronounce. Anyway, let's look at the how and why together. Chao probably developed a liking for history early on, as he watched his father Ban Chao write a chronicle known as the History of the Western Han Dynasty, or the Book of Han. So great was his work that Biao never completed it in his lifetime. His son, Ban Gu, and daughter Ban Chao finished it in his stead. Our protagonist also took active part in the creation of this book, as he was most likely the main source for many of the tales his siblings wrote down. To this day, the Book of Han remains one of the most important sources on the Han dynasty and their surrounding lands and peoples. As Chao grew up, he joined the government as a copy clerk to provide for his family with some additional income. In this time, he garnered the favor of Emperor Han Mingdi and was promoted to library clerk. But this was just the beginning of the young man's career. A few years after their father's death in 60 CE, Ban Gu was arrested as somebody reported him for subversion. Apparently people had claimed to the emperor that the Book of Han was revisionist history. Ban Chao stepped up for his brother and defended him publicly. Again, Emperor Ming was impressed with the brothers. Gu was allowed to write a history of a former emperor, a task he completed so well he eventually was allowed to resume his work on the Book of Han. And Chao was appointed assistant major to General Du Gu. On an expedition to attack the Xiongnu, who may possibly be the Huns that much later invaded Europe, Ban Chao convinced his general, through his success in battle, to put in charge of a diplomatic mission. He traveled far west to the Shanshan kingdom and attempted to persuade them to fall in line with the Han instead of their Xiongnu rivals, by utterly slaughtering the latter's envoys and sending their heads to the king of Shanshan, who then decided it might be in his kingdom's best interest to treat with the Han. Ban Chao spent the next years campaigning against the Xiongnu, eventually expelling them from the Tarim Basin, which was a vital stretch of the Silk Road. One after the other, he also conquered the smaller kingdoms of the area, making them tributaries to his empire. All this effort earned him the title of Protector General of the Western regions, one of the highest military honors a servant to the emperor could receive. This made him effectively the governor of a sizable amount of the Han Empire. In this role, he would serve both as an administrator and protector of the Han interests in the region. He made sure to keep peace between the various people groups, both nomadic and settled, and was the first line of defense against aggression. For example, he beat back the mighty Kushan Empire after they felt unfairly treated by the Han for not being rewarded with a princess to marry after they assisted the Chinese in a war. Despite being outnumbered, the experienced Ban Chao forced the attacking Kushan forces to retreat. Aside from his military exploits, Ban Chao was also a diplomat and always interested in other cultures. And through this curiosity, he had learned of a people far away, yet similar to his own. The Chinese would call them Da Qin, roughly translatable as Big China. Today's historians are somewhat certain that the often mentioned Da Qin was the Roman Empire. In the mind of a Chinese scholar of the time, it only made sense that there is a counterpart to the Middle Kingdom on the other side of the planet to balance it out. Ban Chao was intrigued, and after he had finally achieved peace in the Tarim Basin, he decided to send an envoy, a man named Gan Ying, to find this mysterious place. Interestingly enough, one did not have to cross many different nations to get from Han China to the Imperium Romanum in that time. The Silk Road had spread prosperity from East Asia to the Mediterranean, and this wealth was the foundation of mighty empires, from the Han to Kushan to the Parthians and finally Rome. So the mission was very much one that could be accomplished. Gan Ying, however, did not. While he reached the Parthian Empire, he decided to take a ship to sail around the Arabian Peninsula to reach Roman Egypt. Local sailors, however, eventually managed to persuade him that this trip was too long and too dangerous. Had he simply followed the well-known trade routes, he would have reached Roman Syria in just a few weeks, but apparently none of the locals wanted to tell him that. There is speculation that the Parthians were actually afraid of a potential Roman-Han alliance, and thus made the trip seem much longer and more difficult to accomplish. One has to wonder what would have happened if Ban Chao decided to go himself. His track record of stubbornness certainly would not have been halted by some Parthian sailors, and his cunning mind would have probably seen through the ruse anyway. Alas, Gan Ing reported back to Chao that Da Chin was too far away to be a potential ally and recommended to abort any more plans to contact them. So this will forever remain one of history's biggest what-ifs. Thanks for nothing, Gan Ing. Ban Chao kept his post until his retirement in 97 CE. His age and poor health didn't allow him to fill this important role any longer. 5 years later, in 102 CE, he died at a ripe age of 70 years, as a rich and respected man. His greatest legacy, however, are his accounts. Not just one, but two chronicles of the Han dynasty, the aforementioned Book of Han and the Book of the later Han, are filled with stories of his exploits and accounts of the strange lands and diverse people he met. This concludes today's episode. As always, I want to thank my fantastic artist and you viewers. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like, write a comment and subscribe if you have not done so yet. Don't be like Gan Ing and leave things unfinished. Until next time, bye! Expedition to attack the Xiongnu, who may possibly be the Huns that much later invaded... Xiongnu.